Welcome to the Story Lab. Today, we are still in the Star Trek universe. This time, we want to consider a new Star Trek series. As most fans agree, Star Trek Discovery never quite worked to be the new great Star Trek story. But if want to complain, we also have to do better. So, today, we come up with our own Star Trek series. A new Star Trek series set in the 23rd century with the same basic elements as Star Trek Discovery, only better. In fact, we challenge ourselves to take as many ingredients from Discovery as possible. Here is our list. A series in the General Kirk Spock era, but using modern graphics and thus not playing out on a standard Federation starship. A completely new ship with a distinct profile and an unusual drive system. A generally darker tone. The series is not necessarily about exploration, more about adventure. The story is serialized and divided into chapters. The main character is a first officer rather than a captain. The crew does have internal conflicts as well as conflicts with other species. A few things that we don't want to have are the following. A relative of an original series character. An unexplained or unmotivated drive system. Klingons. Time travel. With those considerations done, we should be good to continue right away. And we already have the results. Great! Let's look at the story that we came up with. The series is called Star Trek Odyssey. This name has a double meaning. One is simply that the main ship is named Odyssey, the other is that the ship and crew will be on an Odyssey, lost somewhere in the galaxy. The reason for this is the special drive of the USS Odyssey. But let's start at the beginning. During its 5-year mission, one of the sister ships of the Enterprise had discovered a crashed alien starship that lay abandoned on a distant moon. Starfleet had recovered the ship and was quite fascinated by the drive system of this alien spacecraft, as it was completely unlike anything they had seen before. And even stranger, the technology of the ship seemed to be biological in nature. The alien starship was analyzed in secret, and it was determined that the drive was a wormhole drive. It opened miniature wormholes to its destinations, meaning that it could go basically anywhere in an instant. It also meant that the aliens who had built the starship could be from the other side of the galaxy for all Starfleet knew. Starfleet and Section 31 were so fascinated by the ship that they decided to restore it and try it out. When the ship had originally crashed, what seemed to be the living spaces had been crushed, but the control room and engine compartment seemed to be okay. So, Starfleet rebuilt the front section of the ship, added a warp drive as backup, re-engineered some of the ship's circuits to run on normal electricity, and adapted all spaces for humans. Then, they assembled a crew to fly the newly constructed hybrid ship. A tough captain was chosen. The man was half cyborg, half human, and had worked for the Secret Service for years. The captain also brought along an unusual ensemble as his crew, all outsiders, that did not initially seem to be destined for greatness. But just as the captain himself, this crew was made up of hidden gems. The central one is our protagonist, the first officer. The hybrid ship is named the USS Odyssey and is prepped for its maiden voyage. Initially, everything seemed to go fine. The ship reacted exactly as predicted, and so it was considered safe to make a test run of the wormhole drive. But this is when everything goes astray. As soon as the drive is powered up, the whole ship comes alive, literally, as all the biotech starts moving and doing stuff. The Starfleet crew has no way of controlling the actions of the ship and jumps somewhere. It doesn't take long to figure out that they have jumped to a completely unknown part of the galaxy and were unlikely to ever find their way back if they cannot figure out their ship. This is the setup. The story from then on is divided into chapters of several episodes each. Here are some of the first chapters. Chapter 1. The crew is trying to get the ship to do what they want, but the ship keeps acting on its own, bringing crew members in great danger. Then, crewmen start disappearing all over the ship. Finally, the captain decides to land the ship on a planet and try to find another way to understand their new environment. The crew also has to deal with each other, trying to grow together as a team in this difficult situation. Chapter 2. Failing to get their ship to work again, the crew starts having contact with a nearby species of helpful aliens, who even lend them some of their ships. However, a series of unfortunate events have the aliens turn on the crew. Angrily, the former allies attack the stranded Odyssey and nearly destroy her. The Starfleet crew defends its ship, which finally seems to get the ship to work with them. They manage to lift off the planet and escape, though the ship activates the drive again and transports the Odyssey and her crew to yet another unknown region of space. Chapter 3. The new sector of space is more dangerous than the previous one, with pirate fleets roaming around and an evil queen ruling over a number of local systems. Some of our crew get captured. Meanwhile, the ship starts to return some of the people that had been lost earlier. It turns out that they had been absorbed by the ship and turned into half-biotech hybrids with special abilities. At first, the crew doesn't understand why the ship is giving these brain-dead crewmen superpowers, but then they realize that the ship is essentially making them into sensors and probes, likely because its real sensors etc. have been destroyed. This explains many of the powers that these half-humans have. One can see all parts of the electromagnetic spectrum, another can hear subspace communications. Another is a human universal translator. Yet another has laser eyes, and yet another can manipulate energy flows. These ship-human crew members prove very useful in rescuing the captured crewmen. The most influential ship-human appears only later though. He is a former main cast member who has been turned into a central aspect of the ship, Control. Chapter 4. Control is not a friend of the humans that steer the ship around. He tries to take over the ship but is seemingly stopped when our first officer gets through to the ship-human. The crew now asks Control to help them make a wormhole jump back to Federation space. But Control lets them jump to yet another unknown region. This region is inhabited by a dangerous group of very powerful and technologically advanced aliens, who consider even the Odyssey to be an outdated design. Though the crew mistrust Control now, they have no other choice but to work with the ship-human to escape the aliens. The crew does restrict Control's access though. But Control does not give up. It manipulates the situations on the ship for several episodes before revealing its plan and taking the ship over once more. However, the captain and first officer had figured Control out and actually had gone back to the advanced aliens to negotiate with them and get some technology to stop Control. Giving up on using the wormhole drive, the crew decides to start to fly back home with the conventional warp drive. What they don't know is that Control had them jump very close to the planet of its builders, who will want the Odyssey back. Chapter 5. The Odyssey reaches a region of space with intense gravitational anomalies. It turns out this is where the builders of the Odyssey live. It turns out that warp travel is nigh impossible there, which is why the aliens had come up with the wormhole drive in the first place. It also turns out that the builders of the Odyssey are even meaner than the other aliens we have met before. Our heroes can narrowly escape the region, having to fight both the aliens outside and the ship on the inside. The crew manages to escape and hide in an asteroid field, which is where they make a curious discovery, an android based on the same biotechnology as the ship. The android was built by the same aliens who built the Odyssey, but escaped and is independent now. He explains that the biotechnology is not only life imitating, they are actually alive and the complex systems even are sentient. Suddenly, the crew is not sure whether the Odyssey had really had an accident on that moon, where Starfleet found it, or whether it crashed there on purpose to kill its slave masters. When Control learns of this, it switches sides. The crew promises to help Control fight back against the aliens and free the other ships and androids from slavery. Well, as you see, we came up with a lot of ideas, and the story might not even be finished yet. Let's summarize our series. The Odyssey is an alien spacecraft running on mysterious biotech and with an incredible wormhole drive as its main system. Starfleet partially rebuilds and adapts the ship, creating our protagonist starship, the USS Odyssey. On a test flight for the alien wormhole drive, the ship gets lost in an unknown region of space and goes on long odyssey through the stars. During this odyssey, the crew not only has to work together to overcome aliens, but also try to figure out their ship and fight its biosystems that seem to want something else than the humans. Please note that everything presented here is simply the results of an experiment. No part of this presentation is intended as a correction of an existing story or claims to be the real story. The selection or omission of any parts of the source material is not to be understood as commentary, positive or negative, on the original productions. These are simply thoughts and experiments based on existing material, and none of it could be created without the work of all those involved in creating the original works. As with any scientific result, you may utilize any of the story ideas that resulted from these experiments for your own experiments or production, while citing this experiment as its source. It is now closing time for our lab. Goodbye until next time.